Look at your dog right now. Go ahead, find the nearest one. That golden retriever drooling on your couch. The tiny Yorkie trembling in a designer sweater. Now imagine this exact scenario. You're walking through the wilderness at midnight, alone, and you encounter the genetic ancestor of that adorable creature. Not a distant relative. The actual biological parent species. A 180-pound gray wolf emerges from the darkness. Yellow eyes locked on yours. Powerful enough to crush your windpipe with one bite. Smart enough to hunt in coordinated packs that can take down animals 10 times their size. This is an apex predator that views humans as potential prey, not companions. The DNA difference between that wolf and your family dog is virtually non-existent. Genetically, they're almost identical. A poodle and a Yellowstone wolf share 99.96% of their genetic code. That's closer than you are to some other humans walking around right now. Yet somehow, impossibly, ancient humans convinced this ultimate killing machine to not just tolerate human presence, but to actively protect human children, sleep in human beds, and literally reshape its entire biology to serve human needs. We transformed nature's perfect predator into something that cries when we leave for work. This wasn't gradual training over a few years. This was a complete species makeover that altered wolf psychology, anatomy, and behavior in ways that should have required millions of years of evolution. We're talking about the most dramatic biological transformation in mammalian history, accomplished by Stone Age people with no understanding of genetics, behavior modification, or animal psychology. How did humans with primitive tools and basic shelters pull off the most successful genetic engineering project in the history of life on Earth? The answer is so counterintuitive, it's forcing scientists to rewrite everything they thought they knew about evolution, domestication, and the relationship between predator and prey species. For decades, the story we told ourselves about dog domestication was beautifully simple. Brave prehistoric humans discovered wolf puppies, raised them with love and patience, selectively bred the friendliest ones, and gradually created loyal hunting companions through intentional human selection. This narrative has exactly one problem. Every piece of it is almost certainly wrong. Modern research reveals something far stranger happened. Humans didn't domesticate wolves. Wolves domesticated themselves. And the reason they did it would make any wildlife biologist laugh out loud. Picture this scenario that likely launched the most successful interspecies partnership in Earth's history. Around 15,000 to 40,000 years ago, human settlements began generating something unprecedented in the natural world. Consistent, predictable food waste. Bones with marrow still inside. Meat scraps with calories attached. Organic refuse that accumulated around campsites in quantities no other species had ever produced. For a wolf pack struggling to bring down massive prey while risking injury or death with every hunt, this represented an evolutionary goldmine. But here's the crucial detail that transforms this from a simple scavenging story into something much more profound. Only certain wolves could exploit this opportunity. Wolves with typical wolf behavior, intense fear of humans, aggressive territoriality, and hair-trigger stress responses couldn't get close enough to human settlements to access the food consistently. They either avoided human areas entirely or were driven off violently when they approached. However, wolves born with naturally lower fear responses, reduced aggression, and higher stress tolerance could edge closer to these mysterious fire-wielding creatures and actually benefit from their proximity. This created what biologists call selection pressure. Not artificial selection imposed by humans, but natural selection in an environment accidentally modified by human activity. The wolves best adapted to exploit human-generated resources gained a massive survival advantage. They ate more consistently. They expended less energy hunting. They had better reproductive success. Their offspring inherited the exact traits that allowed exploitation of this new ecological niche. Over hundreds of generations, wolf populations living near human settlements became dominated by individuals whose psychology allowed them to coexist with the most dangerous predator they'd ever encountered: us. But selecting for reduced fear triggered something completely unexpected that modern science is still trying to understand. When you breed wild animals for tameness, you don't just change behavior. You accidentally activate what researchers call domestication syndrome, a bizarre package deal of physical and psychological transformations that appear together across virtually every domesticated species. Animals bred for calmness develop floppy ears, curved tails, shortened snouts, spotted coats, and retention of juvenile characteristics into adulthood. Dogs, cats, pigs, horses, even laboratory mice show these same changes when you select it for reduced fear of humans. The mechanism involves neural crest cells during embryonic development. When you alter the genetic pathways controlling stress response and fear, you accidentally affect the same developmental systems that determine ear cartilage, tail vertebrae, coat patterns, and facial structure. Ancient wolves hanging around human camps weren't just becoming friendlier. They were involuntarily transforming their entire anatomy as an unintended side effect. The most compelling evidence for this theory comes from one of the most remarkable experiments in modern biology. In 1959, Russian geneticist Dmitry Belyaev began selectively breeding silver foxes for a single trait: Tameness around humans. Subscribe now to discover the shocking speed at which evolution can completely remake a species. Every generation, Belyaev tested foxes for their response to human handlers and bred only the individuals showing the least fear and aggression. No other selection criteria, just friendliness toward people. Within 6 generations, something extraordinary began happening. The foxes didn't just become calmer. They started developing floppy ears, curly tails, spotted coats, and dog-like facial features. They began seeking human attention, making eye contact, and responding to their names. Within 50 years, Belyaev had essentially created domestic dogs using foxes as raw material. The transformation was so complete that the experimental foxes looked, acted, and behaved like a completely different species from their wild ancestors. This experiment proved that the wolf-to-dog transformation could happen faster than anyone previously imagined. With strong selection pressure, fundamental species characteristics can shift dramatically in just decades, not millennia. But the genetic evidence reveals an even more shocking truth about dog domestication. It didn't happen once. DNA analysis shows multiple independent domestication events occurring simultaneously across different continents. Ancient humans in Europe were developing relationships with local wolf populations, while ancient humans in Asia were creating entirely separate partnerships with different wolf groups. These processes happened independently, suggesting that wolf-to-dog transformation was almost inevitable once humans reached certain population densities. This parallel evolution across multiple continents points to something profound. The meeting between wolves and humans wasn't a lucky accident that happened once in history. It was an evolutionary inevitability that occurred everywhere the right conditions emerged. The archaeological record supports this picture of gradual, complex transformation. The earliest dog burials, found across Europe and Asia dating back roughly 14,000 years, show animals anatomically intermediate between wolves and modern dogs. These ancient dogs retained wolf-like size and strength, but displayed clear signs of domestication syndrome, reshaping their skulls, teeth, and body proportions. Perhaps most remarkably, behavioral changes evolved much faster than physical ones. Genetic analysis suggests that the psychological traits we associate with dogs, eagerness to please humans, attention to human gestural cues, reduced fear responses, evolved within just a few thousand years. Physical changes followed more slowly. Early dogs looked essentially like wolves for thousands of years after they'd already developed fundamentally dog-like psychology. This timeline reveals that behavioral evolution, driven by survival advantages of cooperating with humans, happened first and pulled anatomical evolution along behind it. The human side of this relationship was equally transformative. Humans living with early dogs gained hunting advantages, sophisticated early warning systems, and companionship that provided psychological benefits during harsh survival conditions. Archaeological evidence from human settlements with dog remains shows increased hunting success rates, suggesting these partnerships provided measurable survival advantages to both species. Modern research has identified specific genetic changes that occurred during wolf-to-dog transformation, and some are genuinely surprising. Dogs evolved enhanced abilities to digest starch compared to wolves, indicating they adapted to eating agricultural food waste as human diets changed. They also developed genetic variations affecting oxytocin production, the same hormone promoting bonding between human parents and children. Dogs literally evolved the biochemistry necessary to form emotional attachments to humans. Perhaps most remarkably, dogs evolved specialized abilities to read human facial expressions and gestural cues that even our closest primate relatives cannot match. Point at something, and a dog instinctively looks where you're pointing. Wolves raised by humans from birth don't develop this ability reliably. This suggests that over thousands of years of coevolution, dogs developed cognitive abilities specifically for interpreting and responding to human communication. Dogs also evolved a unique facial muscle that wolves lack entirely. The levator anguli oculi medialis sits above their eyebrows and creates the classic puppy dog eyes expression that makes humans want to care for them. This muscle appears to have been directly selected for because it successfully manipulates human emotions. Dogs unknowingly evolved a biological hack for making humans feel responsible for their welfare. The transformation was so complete that modern dogs are essentially dependent on humans for survival in ways their wolf ancestors never were. Most dog breeds cannot reproduce without human assistance. Many cannot regulate their body temperature effectively. They traded the complete self-sufficiency of wolves for specialized abilities to thrive in human environments. From an evolutionary perspective, this dependency strategy was wildly successful. There are roughly 1 billion dogs on Earth today, compared to maybe 300,000 wolves worldwide. Becoming reliant on humans turned out to be the best survival decision wolves ever made. But the story of dog domestication reveals something equally important about human evolution. We didn't domesticate dogs through superior intelligence or technological mastery. We domesticated them by creating environmental conditions that made cooperation more advantageous than competition. The first humans to live with dogs weren't genetic engineers or animal behavior experts. They were simply people who generated enough food waste to attract scavenging wolves, and who tolerated their presence long enough for natural selection to create something unprecedented. This suggests that human civilization itself, our tendency to create settlements, generate surplus resources, and tolerate other species in our living spaces, was the real driving force behind dog domestication. The relationship that began with wolves scavenging around human garbage dumps has evolved into something unique in the natural world. Modern dogs demonstrate loyalty, emotional attachment, and willingness to sacrifice for human welfare that exceeds what most humans show toward each other. Guide dogs will walk their blind owners into traffic if commanded, trusting human judgment over their own survival instincts. Military dogs charge into gunfire to protect human soldiers. Family dogs routinely risk their lives defending human children from threats. This level of interspecies cooperation doesn't exist anywhere else in nature. It represents a genuine evolutionary novelty created by the unique intersection of human settlement patterns and wolf behavioral flexibility. By 10,000 years ago, when humans were just beginning agriculture, dogs were already so integrated into human society that they appear in ceremonial burials. Human graves from this period contain dog remains carefully arranged as companions, not food sources. These were people who had lived alongside dogs and wanted them present in death as in life. In a world of brutal survival conditions and constant physical hardship, humans were spending emotional energy grieving their dogs and burying them with ceremony. This represents one of the oldest evidence we have for genuine interspecies emotional bonds, and it's still happening today. Somewhere right now, someone is spending money they probably shouldn't on artisanal dog food and feeling completely justified about it. The transformation of wolves into dogs wasn't just the creation of a new domestic animal. It was the creation of a new form of relationship between species, one based on mutual benefit, emotional attachment, and cooperation rather than dominance or exploitation. Understanding how this transformation happened has implications extending far beyond dog breeding. The same processes that turned wolves into dogs are helping scientists understand human evolution, agricultural development, and the creation of complex societies. The next time you see a dog waiting patiently outside a store for its owner, you're witnessing the end result of the most successful evolutionary experiment in cooperation ever conducted. That animals' ancestors chose to abandon their independence as apex predators to become partners with a bipedal species they'd never encountered before. It worked beyond anyone's wildest imagination. Dogs inherited the earth by learning to share it with humans. They gave up their wildness to gain something approaching immortality as humanity's most constant companions. The wolf that first approached a human campfire thousands of years ago couldn't have known it was making the most consequential species decision in mammalian history. It was probably just hungry, following the scent of discarded bones and meat scraps. But that single act of courage, that first tentative step toward partnership, launched the longest and most successful friendship in the history of life on Earth. Every dog that has ever lived represents a small victory for the idea that cooperation can triumph over competition, that trust can overcome ancient instincts, and that two completely different species can evolve together towards something neither could achieve alone.